Hey cohort. I'm going to share my reflection on how this class, the cross-cultural and multicultural psychologies class, helped me to build an understanding of myself in order to make a decision about what I want to do for graduate school. The biggest takeaway that I have for this class is gratitude. I'm just very grateful for this opportunity. I learned a lot about self-development as well as learning about cross-cultural, multicultural psychologies. When I started this class, I was in a part of my spiritual development where I was having a lot of fear and a lot of doubt. And one of the first things that happened for me in this class is that I started to be able to identify the critic in, my self-critic that was telling me that this class or that my spiritual beliefs are crazy or absurd. When I read Educating African-Centered Psychologists Towards a Comprehensive Paradigm, I honestly didn't understand a lot of it. It was really challenging for me, and I felt a lot of imposter syndrome because it was really hard to understand. But I was starting to able to identify my critic as Eurocentric logic, and I started to understand that my culture, the culture I grew up in, is different than a lot of other cultures, which was a big deal for me. It's not that I've never had exposure to an idea of Eurocentric logic before, but it's always been very other to me, and so to kind of dive into it was really, it was a permission slip for me, very healing. Even though I didn't understand a lot of it, I still felt like there are other people. I don't feel as alone. I don't feel as crazy. When the Towards a Comprehensive Paradigm, Educating African-Centered Psychologists, it really changed the way I view academia. At the same time, in our research methodologies class, we were learning about alternative ways of knowing, and so those were kind of going back and forth. The chart that they had of the cycle of before, beginning, but belonging, being, becoming, beholding, and beyond, it really resonated with me, and it felt like a part of me felt just very home in that aspect, and so I started to really open my mind to what was possible. Even though we're at CIIS and it's this progressive school, I still had a lot of fears about the esoteric sciences. So it really started to open my mind. At the same time, the next week, we learned about transpersonal psychology, and how it's not, a lot of African-centered psychologies are not incorporated into transpersonal psychologies. And we learned last semester kind of the history of psychoanalytic thought, and it kind of started with Freud. And of course I knew that there were indigenous thought that happened before that, but I just took it at face value that academia doesn't consider those type of things. And so it surprised me, and I got to really confront my own positionality as I was like, this isn't right, this isn't fair. And Dr. D was like, yeah. And I was like, it was an interesting thing. Instead of hearing about it, it was like an experience that I had as a white person. I don't have that experience. I live in a more or less just world, and so it was interesting for me. It was a big learning curve for me. When we got to the chart, Edward Nichols' philosophical aspects of cultural differences, it was a really solidifying process for me to see that chart and the Eurocentric values as not centralized, and just the way that the chart was organized. I have had some exposure to the Asian, from Buddhism, yoga, martial arts, Zen, stuff like that. I had some access to those thoughts. I personally study Native American spirituality, so I had some some context of that, but it was interesting to me that that African-centered psychologies or worldviews were I have zero exposure to that, and it was really fascinating that to be studying something that it's the first time I've studied something that I have so little knowledge of before going in. Again, tied in with what we were learning in the research methodologies class, we were learning about science being weird, which is Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic, and that a lot of the science really doesn't represent a large population of what of humans. That it only incorporates, a Western lens. And at the time, it was really important to me because at the time I was considering grad school and kind of nothing was feeling right. And I was like, what I want is just the letters after my name. And so I was like, maybe I'll just go to the cheapest school ever and just get the credentials and just get it over with it. And after that unit of studying that chart and learning about how much science doesn't include in its studies right now in Western science, I decided that wasn't my route. I definitively did not want to do that and continue on that path. Towards a Black psychology, that documentary really resonated with me. Just being community oriented, I know that I am a community oriented person, and it made me wonder if my calling is to address the individual or a community, and do I really want to be a therapist? It made me ask those big questions, which was really important. Pan-African humanists, the Praxis for Indigenous Knowledge Systems, this was a really important step in my personal journey because I enjoyed reading it, and I was shocked that I enjoyed reading it because it was dense and hard to follow, and the vocabulary is challenging, and I would have never, before I'd taken this class, I would have never saw an article like that and decided to read it. I just would have nah. So deciding to take guidance from other people and let other people guide me on this path was really important to me in deciding where I want to go in my education, and not only being self-directed, but also taking guidance from others. And then when we got into the future of healing, shifting from informed care to healing-centered engagement, Dr. Sean Ginwright, his work was really, really, really important to me because at that point I was really considering if I want to study psychology in a more community way or take a license route. And the two things that really stood out to me was he talked about burnout, and I just visualized myself as a therapist, and and taking a license route to me always felt like a little bit more of a safer option because I hesitated to study psychology without getting a license. But my heart was always geared towards more of the community side, and I just could see, I just knew that that burnout was a real thing and something I would probably experience as I pictured myself in a therapist role. Again, nothing against therapy, but it was just a realization for me that his work helped me see. And then the one-sided conversation that he talked about allowing himself to have problems, sharing his problems with his students. That was like a big yes for me too. I just can't imagine myself living a life of a one-sided conversation, and I know there's a lot of people that would be really good at this, but it's just not who I am. I think I am meant to also share my stories and share and know that I am part of the messiness that I am participating in, and that power imbalance with children, youth, which is what I want to work with, is really important to me, to not be an authority figure to them, but to just be, part of their perspective. That helped me decide to take a psychology on the community side instead of going the license route, which was more in alignment with following my heart. The last thing I want to say is that when we read Dr. D's Sankofa perspective, I again just felt a lot of gratitude. I realized that I have a lot of apprehension about the different transpersonal or the different routes that aren't African centered or indigenous focused. And I don't have the ability to differentiate those right now, but just as an undergrad going into that with this keen eye of being able to tell which programs are more or less decolonized and having that knowledge base, just feels like such a strong foundation, and I am extremely grateful for that opportunity. Thank you very much.